Shabbos Parshas Achri Mois Kedoshim from Tafshim Memches 1988. It begins with what we talk about in the first parsha of the double parsha of Achri Mois with Yom Kippur, and then at the end, next part of the Bible, he's going to talk about Parshas Kedoshim. In this day, Hashem will atone for you to purify you. לפני Hashem תטהרו, before Hashem you will become purified, you will become cleansed. It's explained concerning this in the Torah of our parsha, which the Rebbe refers to as a Chassidus parsha Shavua. It's the Chassidus Torah portion that we should review, just like we have to review the regular Torah portion. The same thing we have to review the Chassidic Torah portion, which is the way the Torah portion is discussed in the Alter Rebbe's Likutei Torah and Torah Or. So the Alter Rebbe explains the Lifnei Havaya. What does it mean? Lifnei Havaya, the simple meaning Lifnei Havaya means in the presence of Yud Kei Vav Kei, in the presence of Hashem, in front of Hashem. But the way the Alter Rebbe explains it, Lifnei is also from the word Pirushoi. It means before, higher than. L'mayla M'shem Havaya, that the purification and the atonement of a neshama comes higher than the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, as we'll soon explain why. Well, maybe Bizad Alter Rebbe brings concerning this the Inyan Tshuva. What's the idea of Tshuva? It's about returning his godly soul to the source where it was hewn out from, like it was before the chain order of descent of all the worlds, and before the descent of all the different levels to this world, to become enclosed in the physical body of a human being. At that time, before it went through all those processes of development, it was part of the source and the root of all the worlds, the infinite light of Hashem. What happened? After its descent and the chain descent of the levels, it became changed from one entity to another entity. It descended to become clothed in the body of a person down here in this world. Because of that, it has to be returned to its source, the way it used to be prior to coming down to this world, and to raise up his soul to Hashem, to be cleaving to the living God, that should be subsumed again in the infinite light of Hashem, like initially. Now, in the Rebbe, in the second paragraph, is going to explain that one part of the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe informs us about the other part. The return wasn't explicit what level we're returning to. But in the beginning of the Maimer, it said that where do we come from? We come all the way from Lifnei Havaya. That the atonement is Lifnei Havaya. But it doesn't say what is the source, what level is the source of the Nefesh HaLekis. So one will inform the other. Let's see the second paragraph. Yes, Shloimer, we could say, the Mashma Vayba Maimer Atoichin in Tshuva. From this, that the Maimer explains that the content of the idea of Tshuva is to return his soul to its source. It's also to explain what it says over here concerning Tshuva, that the level of Tshuva is Lifnei Havaya, you will become purified, L'mayla M'shem Havaya kanal, higher than the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, like we said before. The where it says in the Maimer that the root of the Neshama is in the infinite light of Hashem. Yesh loymar, we could say, the intention of this is to the infinite light of Hashem that's beyond the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Since the idea of tshuva is to return his soul to its source and its root, Nimtza comes out She'inyan HaTshuva L'hoshvas HaNefesh L'mayla M'Shem Havaya. That the idea of tshuva is to return the soul to a level that's higher than the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. Therefore, it says over here by tshuva before Havaya, ki tshuva hashavas hanefesh l'mayla m'shem Havaya, because tshuva is returning the soul to beyond the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, as he will explain what that is. What are the different stages the neshama could be at, and what does it mean to return it to higher than Yud Kei Vav Kei? So he says in the third paragraph, will be in an explanation of this matter. That the root of the neshama is higher than the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. We say, the neshama you placed within me, we say every single morning, we declare it's pure. And then, Ata barasa gaimer, you created her. Chulu. This means, the neshama on its own, before it was even a state of being created, it's in a state of purity, that's even higher than you created her. This means to indicate this level that it is pure. It's the level of godliness that's beyond the entire concept of the world coming into being. Because barasa is already, the way the neshama is a created being. You were created. So in the similar vein, the entire world was a creation, but we're saying Tahirahi, that it is pure, that's higher than the level of barasa. That means it's higher than the creation of the world. Not only is it higher than the creation of the world, but also it's also higher than the godliness that brings the world into being. Meaning, there is the world itself that was created, and that the neshama is higher because it's Tahirahi, it's higher than the creation of the world. But there's the divine energy that actually brings the world into being, and that neshama, when we say it's Tahirahi, it's pure, it's even beyond that level of that divine energy. And in that divine energy, there's also different levels. And the level of godliness that brings the worlds into being, the neshama is even higher than the most highest level in godliness that brings the world into being. As he will explain now, the difference between the different levels of godliness that brings the world into being. And godliness that brings the world into being, there's many levels. There's the level of godliness that's mamish, totally embedded, if you will, and invested in the world. That's the divine name of Elokim. Like it says in the pasuk, Bereshis bara Elokim, that Elokim created the beginning. So in other words, or in the beginning, Elokim created. So that means that Elokim is the hands-on creator involved and invested in the world. Higher than that, there's a level of godliness, a divine energy that doesn't have a complete and total investedness and connection with the world. That's the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei of Hashem. But even that, still in all, also the level of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei also has a certain connection to the world. It's called Havaya, Al Shem Shemahaves Ha'olam, because it brings the world into being. And not only do we look at the meaning of the name, but we also look at the idea that we find in a pasuk that brings Shem Havaya into the creation. And it says, Biom Havaya Lekim Eretz V'Shamayim, at the end of the creation in chapter 2 of Chumash Bereshis, it says, in the day that Havaya and Lekim made the earth and the heavens. We see from this pasuk that the making of earth and heaven is connected not only to the name Elokim, Elagam l'shem Havaya, but also to the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. From this comes out So the fact that the neshama's root is in the level that she is pure, beyond the level that you created her. Not only is the neshama higher than the creation itself, than the world itself, and not only from the name Elokim that has this hands-on, embedded, and invested level in creation, it's even higher than the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, because also the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is connected to the creation and coming into being of the world, and the neshama is even higher than that level. So now he's going to explain how can the neshama in its essential state, the level of Tahori, be higher even than Shem Havai. To be able to explain this matter even more in depth, in Yadua it's known the Shem Havayu Shema Etzem V'Shema Mefurish V'Shem Yuchad. The name of the Yud Kei Vav Kei is Hashem's essential name, and it's the name that's explicitly and it's also unique to him, meaning all the other names of Hashem have other meanings and connotations. For example, Shem Elokim could be used to refer to Dayanim. We find in Parsh Mishpatim that Dayanim are called Elokim, etc. So only the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is unique to Hashem, meaning V'hainu Shu Shem Hachin Naila, it's the most elevated name of Hashem. So therefore, even though Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei is so high, but on the other hand, it still connects to the creation. Therefore, we have to say the fact that the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is associated with the coming into being of the world, with the creation of the world. After all is said and done, it's only Hashem's name and not Hashem's essence. But on the other hand, the root of the neshama is even higher than Hashem's name. It's all the way in Hashem's essence. So this will be understood the depth of the matter. That the root of the neshama is the level that she is pure, beyond the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei that has some association with the creation of the world. Because the root of the neshama is in Hashem's very essence, that's beyond all names and all divine revelations. The second paragraph on the second page. Now, this idea that we return the soul to its root. That's what we're talking about, the idea of tshuva. It's an ascent to the neshama, meaning there is a gain involved. It's not just the neshama came from the level of Tahira. It came from that level. It's beyond Shem Elokim and Shem Havaya and definitely beyond the world. And now when the neshama returns, it's returning to the same place it came from. That's not the way it works. But rather it ascends and it gains from this descent. And the Rebbe is going to explain two reasons and two ways how it gains from this descent, how it profits from that. The point of explanation, this is the fact that even prior to the creation, the neshama was rooted in Hashem's essence. That's the way the neshama is above in the spiritual realms. That's how it was rooted in Hashem. So you only can see this quality of the neshama as the neshama is a spiritual entity that has its connection with Hashem. As opposed to the fact that afterwards the neshama down here does tshuva, the neshama down here returns to Hashem. So hakavana bezeh, the intention this is shegam kimoisha neshama nimtzas lamata, also the way the neshama finds itself down here below. Neshama melubeshet beguf, a soul enclosed in a body, Also, on this level, it comes about that it should be that the spirit will return to the Hashem that gave it. Meaning, here we see a great power in the neshama. Despite its descent, it's still connected, as he's going to explain. The idea behind this is the fact that the soul returning to its root is accomplished through the soul, through the service of the soul down here below. It is making a home for Hashem down here below. What's the content of this idea of making the world into a home for Hashem? The point of this service is to accomplish that even in this world, in this lowest level, that's a home for Hashem. Hashem's essence should shine and be revealed over there without any constrictions. Just like in the literal sense of a home of a person. The very essence of the person lives in the home, meaning he doesn't feel any limitations, he doesn't feel any constrictions. When you're outside of your home, when you're a guest somewhere, you need to act accordingly. But here, you are feeling completely yourself. The same thing, Hashem being at home in this world means he wants to be himself in his full expansiveness. So too, it's in the fact that the world becomes a home for Hashem. Also down there below, his very essence becomes revealed without any constrictions. Like it says, that your master will not anymore cover himself. It's explained in Tanya and at length in many places. He will not cover himself with you with a garment or any other type of covering. Through a neshama, doing that, bringing Hashem's essence to be revealed down here below, should be at home over here down below. This also accomplishes an ascent in the neshama. We return it to its root in its very essence. Moving for this is understood. The reason why the neshama returns to its root, that's the way the neshama is enclosed in the body. The fact that the neshama drew down Hashem's very essence is that we drew him down here below. So the neshama should also be the way it's down here below, not later on it's returning to the essence. Therefore also the reward that the neshama attains for this service, who gamkin al derech says, also in a similar vein, that the spirit will return to Hashem, that gave it not after 120 or 180, but also gambi yoisel lamata, also while being down here below, neshama melubeshes beguf. The way neshama is enclosed in the body. That is the ascent that the neshama gains through its descent into the body, as the Rebbe always emphasizes in all the Mamorim and even in the Sikhs, that it's Yirid al Tzorech Aliyah. It's a descent for the sake of an ascent. Even in this level, where the neshama is found down here below and clothed in a body. It happens, it becomes in a state of being returned to the God that gave it. Here's what I told you before, that the ascent is made up of two components. Aleph, one aspect of the ascent, even though seemingly it's returning to the same place it came from. So the first idea is Aleph is the first thing is the Zesh Gam Biyosan Shamalamata Rechazeres Lias Devuka Batsmusi is Barach Varuch Tashvelakman Shanusana. The fact that it's returning to cleave in Hashem's essence, that the spirit will return to Hashem that gave it. This indicates the powerful bond in Hashem's essence. Similar to what's explained in Tanya concerning a sin. That even during the time of the sin, the Nefesh Elokis was faithful to Hashem. And here the Rebbe is going to analyze these two expressions that Alter Rebbe uses, ba'amna and itay, to show how powerful this is. The amna v'itay moira al toikev hiskashrusa shenisha gamish asachet. These two words, faithful and with him, indicates on the powerful bond that it remains with the Nefesh Elokis even during the sin. So if that's so even during the sin, how much more so in general? Mezemuv and Gambin and Yeridas HaNeshama Lamata. From this it's understood also concerning the descent of the Neshama down here below. The Zesh Gam Lamata Nasa Varuch Tashiv Elokim Asher Nesana. The very fact that down here below becomes the idea that it returns to the Eibishter that gave it Hareza Moira. This indicates Al Toikif is conscious on Neshama Batzmusi is Baruch, on the powerful bond that the Neshama has in Hashem's essence, that despite the fact that it descended so low and descended into a physical body, etc., still in all, it still retains and maintains the bond that it had even prior to its descent. That is one ascent that occurs by the Neshama descending down here and reaching this level of return. Vabez, last line on this page, the second advantage and the second aliyah that the neshama has, the above mentioned avodah that we said that of the neshama returning while being down here, payelas gam alaguf influences also the upulasa ba'guf and its effect and influence on the body. He loiba oifen shaguf mizbatel. It's not that the body is overwhelmed and becomes nullified by the neshama. Elagam k'moy shaguf nisharim tziyusay. Rather, also the way the neshama, the body remains an entity and existence. Harei neshama payelos olav, the neshama influences it and affects it. V'hainu masha oisa gufay tafel v'nafshi ikir. The fact, like the Alter Rebbe uses the term in Tanya at the end of Perek Lamed Aleph and the beginning of Perek Lamed Beis, that he makes his body ancillary and he makes his soul primary. That is the big chiddush, that is the big uniqueness and the advantage that the neshama did not have when it was Tahirahi, when it was initially above. Second paragraph on this page. Here the Rebbe is going to go from Parshas Achrei to Parshas Kedoshim, which we also read this week. We can connect what is brought down with the Torah. And Parshas Kedoshim, Chassidus Parsha da Seder Ashniya, this was the Chassidus Torah portion of the second Torah portion of this week. Ala Pasuk, where it says in the Pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim, Kisavoyu Alart, when you come to the land Eretz Yisrael, when etatem koletz Michael Gomer, you will plant every fruit tree. The lachura in a movement, seemingly it's not understood. When we look at the events that the psukim are going to describe over here concerning the din of Arla, the first 3 years, then the 4th year, and the 5th year, it's seemingly he's working his way up from below to above. First 3 years, the tree is stopped up, covered over. You cannot eat from the fruits of the tree. That's the lower type of avodah of turning away from bad. This is bad, I can't deal with it. Ubishana Aravi is the 4th year of the tree's fruits. Kodesh Elulum Lavaya. It's holy for praises for Hashem. That he eats it in Yerushalayim in a holy manner. This eating in Yerushalayim in a holy manner is Dugmas Ha'achila de Shabbos v'Yom Tov. It's similar to the eating on Shabbos and Yom Tov, which is B'chinas Asei Tov. That's already a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah, a positive commandment, a mitzvah aseh, to eat it, and eat it in a holy manner. But if you look at what takes place afterwards on the 5th year, we seem to have regressed. We were going higher and higher, and then the fifth year seems to be falling back. It's not understood. The fact that in the fifth year it's permitted to eat it everywhere, and even in a mundane weekday manner, and even more so, not just also in a weekday manner. But the majority of what a person eats is eating during the weekday, and not from Shabbos and Yom Tov. So the progression seems to be a regression. You go from the 3 years to the fourth year, and then you're regressing again. So he answers, the idea behind this is that Yisron, the Shana Chamishi, is the quality and the advantage of the fifth year. It's a much higher service that it has the capability to refine also the physical items. That should be in all your ways, you shall know him. Is even more so, all your actions will be for the sake of heaven. Even while they're your actions, even when it's lacking the idea of you shall know him, they are for the sake of heaven. In other words, you are bringing the godliness into the mundane. Similar to what we said before, like we said before, that he affects and influences the body, that his body should be ancillary and auxiliary, and his soul should be primary. And now the Rebbe concludes with a bracha, should be the will of Hashem. Through speaking about these matters, we will come to fulfilling the mitzvahs that are dependent on the agriculture of Eretz Yisrael, but poil, in actuality, this will be when Mashiach comes, then it will be in the ultimate perfection, then all of its inhabitants, meaning all the 12 tribes, will live in Eretz Yisrael. Even in the second base of Mikdash, we didn't have all the inhabitants because we were missing the 10 tribes. We have to know if all the agricultural mitzvahs were fully in their perfect state, even after the 10 tribes went into exile in the first Beis HaMikdash. Mashenkin lost love as opposed to when Mashiach comes, then all of its inhabitants will be living upon it. Especially while speaking about these things, we're talking about it in the inner part of the Torah, about all these topics of the agricultural laws in Eretz Yisrael. The idea of these topics is the spreading of the well springs outward. This is this Maimer in Likutei Torah on Parshas Achrei. There's also an explanation from the third Lubavitcher Rebbe that Tzemach Tzedek ulachroin nitwas gam admorem tzoi. And lately, in that year, close to that year, it was printed also a Maimer from the Mittler Rebbe on this topic. It's also associated with Lag BaOmer, which was coming up. This was already the 13th day of the Omer, was 5 days before Lag BaOmer when the Rebbe said this Maimer. The idea of Lag BaOmer is the revelation of the inner part of the Torah. Therefore, the joy involved with it is a revealed joy, as he's about to explain. That's the difference between the 7th of Adar, which is the yahrzeit of Moshe Rabbeinu, versus Lag BaOmer, which is the yahrzeit of Reb Shimon Yochai. The Zayin ba'Adar initially, the 7th of Adar, was the opposite of something joyous. Only after the story with Haman and Achashverosh and Megillas Esther was it transformed to a date of joy. As opposed to Lag BaOmer began right away, was a revealed joy. An additional quality is the Lag BaOmer b'Sfiras Hodsha b'Hoid. Lag BaOmer takes place in the sphere of Hodsha b'Hoid v'Shavua Chamishes Sfiras Omer. It's already the 5th week. That's what Hoid is, the 5th sphere. So it's the 5th week of Sfiras Omer. Bechinas Achit Tachten. The 5th week means that the majority of the spheres are already taken care of, so it's already considered the lowest level. Always the lowest level is connected with the highest most level. It's even higher than a definition of higher. A joy beyond every type of measure and boundary. By days of Boim Lagula Mitzvah Shlema, V'simchas Olam Al Roshim, through that we come to the true and complete redemption and everlasting joy upon their heads.